Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video, surprisingly soon. And this is because I have an apology to make, and that is that I missed out on the earliest batch of submissions by you guys. Those of you who submitted right away, unfortunately, I'm not quite familiar with how Discord works in this way, but apparently, if a post is more than 30 days old, it gets sent to the older posts section, and somehow, right, even in the newest post sections, I think based on engagement, there were some posts from 2024 who went in front of these. So that is why I kind of cut off the when looking through the submissions, I can mentally cut off everything past some of the posts that were sent in at 2024. So my apologies. It's absolutely my fault for not checking more thoroughly, but here I am. So today we're going to take a look at the submissions of those who were the fastest to respond to the anniversary event. So let that be clear, these people were very, very early, and I genuinely appreciate your enthusiasm so much. So once again, my apologies for the delay, and here we go. And first up, we have Moshi Moshi, is that the correct way to pronounce it? Who says, "Hey everyone, here are some artworks I did recently that I'm really proud of. I love K-pop and I'm a big fan of From Software games. My faves are Elden Ring and Dark Souls 3, so I aim at creating illustrations that combine both K-pop and dark fantasy. Sometimes I also draw characters from anime, movies, or series, for example Arcane. If you have any feedbacks, feel free. By the way, if you have any suggestions on how to find composition ideas, that would be great. As you can see on these four pieces, they kind of look the same. I struggle a bit when it comes to finding background ideas. So let's take a look. My first impression is that these are very detailed. So let's open them up. Well, this one certainly looks really, really unique, right? Like as they said, right? They do love From Software games and K-pop, so this is quite an interesting combination. I'm very impressed. Like of all the art I've seen throughout the years, right? Not only from you guys, but just in general, as how we all look at art online. I've never really seen this before, so you have my attention. This looks really good, and the concept is very interesting as well. It certainly, it certainly belongs to you in a sense that, right? I doubt very many other people would have the same passion for tackling these themes in this combination as you have. So very impressive first piece. Love this eclipse effect. I'm assuming that's going to be something from the FromSoft games. Well, personally, there was a period of time in my life where I really enjoyed them quite a bit. Like, ironically, I had played Dark Souls 2 the most. Apparently, it's like a dark horse among the Dark Souls games, but I had quite a bit of fun with it. And somehow, by the time 3 came out, I was already pretty busy and I wasn't really able to enjoy as much as I would have liked to. So yeah, it's interesting hearing that. But you could definitely see the influence, right? I myself, I admittedly don't listen to too much of K-pop, but the visuals with K-pop is that they're pretty striking in essence, right? They have some pretty solid image directors and all that who kind of present their talents, the best they can. And so I guess in a sense I'm familiar with both mediums, I guess. And here you can see where they mention the background's a little bit similar. That's pretty interesting as well, right? Love the design of the sword. And of course the other parts of the costume are more K-pop like, right? So very lovely combination, I have to say. Love the effect here too, right? That sort of spark and lens flare. Oh, and here we have another one. This one is very impressive. I love the effect on the wings, right? Love the foreshortening on the wings as well, right? They're just made of like a mass of magical particles. No, but it feels something more visceral, right? It feels something a little bit more rough rather than something just floaty and magical. I love the effect here. It looks really, really good. Yeah, once again, right, the background very much FromSoft inspired, I'm gonna guess. While the pretty lady, I assume, is more sort of a K-pop style. I love the attention to detail on the materials as well. You can see here, really drawing out the sort of material on her. What do we call this? Extended collar scarf, shoulder drapes. yeah, I love the material here, right? Like the long, thin strands. Um, I really like it very much. You definitely have a great eye for material. I think that much is certainly true. And I can see where you extended the canvas. I do that sometimes as well. So you can extend the canvas on the left side and the right side too. I think that's a pretty good choice, right? Because if we are drawing wings, then kind of constraining the character to this middle third is doesn't quite give you the opportunity to show as much as you would like. So it's a great choice. Very lovely composition and use of materials here. Very impressive. And the last one, a bit of a dual shot. Once again, very lovely ladies. Interesting design on the back here. This one's definitely a little bit less FromSoft, I'm guessing. Feels like something a bit modern. But nonetheless, I love the kind of desert feel you have going on in all of these, right? They're kind of like a very dry landscape. It kind of has that vibe. And here too, if anything, it feels kind of something that feels like an apocalyptic wasteland. It's very interesting, right? You can see here the hairstyles are, I'm not sure if they're still more of K-pop, but more of your imagination. But either way, I think these look really good as well. Loving the color usage and especially loving the use of this yellow environment, right? This sandy, almost ruin-like environment. It's like, for those you know, the Fist of the North Star. It's a pretty old anime. I'm not that old, but I did enjoy the visuals of it quite a bit, right? That kind of wasteland vibe that really not many anime or shows really have that much of. So it just kind of reminded me of that all of a sudden, but I really like this one. It's pretty cool as well. Love that you're managing the lighting as well. And I think overall, I think you've done a wonderful job. It's a very, very unique combination, and I think you should keep developing on this, right? Well, since you have asked for ideas specifically regarding compositions, and also regarding backgrounds, right? Which I think you are onto something with these backgrounds, but I think another thing you can consider is rather than limiting your influences to these two items only, which I understand they are very important to you, which is excellent, right? You need to have passion for things that you are going to draw a lot. But you may also consider taking more reference from like random Pinterest stuff, because Pinterest, right? I know Pinterest has this idea that is pretty normie and stuff, but it's really good. Like, I know there's a bunch of AI on it now, and it's kind of icky. But you know, generally speaking, as long as you don't click on it, it shouldn't prompt you with more of it. So that's the best I can say. But it does have lots of good materials from photographers, from other artists, and of course, right, you can also follow more photographers as well if you want to get it directly from the source in terms of inspiration. So all these are places where you can kind of gate or receive a bit more inspiration from, and I would love to see you take on drawing these characters in more of a real setting rather than a fantasy one. I think that should be very interesting, right? Because you have like a real, like the core of the character is K-pop, so it's kind of real. And then you have a city or something that is modern, doesn't need to be too fantasy, which is also more real. But then you can have these kind of FromSoft-like designs in them, which I think is pretty cool. And honestly, I guess it's something I do a little bit of as well, right? Because some of my characters have swords, and you know, you don't see swords that much in real life. So I guess, yeah, just some ideas for you, but otherwise, lovely, lovely work. Love to see you keep developing this, because this is definitely a very unique set of influences you have here. So lots of potential, and I would love to see what you continue to do with it. So thanks again, Moshi Moshi, for the submission, and let's move on to our next participant, Julia. Julia, thank you for submitting again. You were definitely here last year, so I feel really bad for missing out on you on your submission, and of course everyone else's because of my mistake. So Julia says, "Hi, these are my recent works. I have an aesthetic with colors more similar to the first one, mixing with white so the colors don't clash as much, but I like vibrant colors. Since your Pixiv tutorial, I tried my hand at darker environments, as you can see in my Sephiroth drawing, and that was quite some time ago, so I had recently remastered it. I really liked it as well, but I'm worried that the palette is still too saturated everywhere. I would love your unfiltered feedback on everything in general, my goodness. I especially spend time in the face, features, and proportions of the characters, but I feel I could improve on the proportions and perspective, as sometimes I feel I don't know why I end up choosing something. Thank you." So, well, thank you for sharing out your drawings with me. And firstly, just to kind of talk about some of the things you've said, right? Like mixing with white so that the colors don't clash as much. I think you've discovered it something really good on your own, because that is in fact true, right? If you look at a lot of my drawings, chances are you will find that mostly they're dominated by fairly neutral hues. Sometimes you have a wide kind of a almost like a color correction on it to create a certain mood, but most of the time you'll notice that the base of the drawing is something that is more neutral and weak, like using sort of darkness, or recently, a little bit more brighter tones to kind of anchor the piece, where you have and then you have like sparks of color or even larger areas of color, right? Because once again, right, highly contrasting colors do clash a little bit more than we would usually like. Let's just say that. So I think it's a good choice. If that is something you appreciate, and I think it's absolutely fine to keep developing in that way. There's nothing wrong with your preference, right? As you mentioned, you have that aesthetic, which is excellent. And so now you have mentioned that with darker environments, you're having a little bit of trouble working with palettes because they start to feel a bit too saturated. So let's take a bit of a closer look. A very interesting, lovely composition. You have the very I'm not sure which character is this. Might be an OC. I apologize if I, think this is a fan art or anything, because I think the design is done very well. Very nice effect with floating petals. And that pink is very, very cute. Good work. And this one's the one they mentioned that when things get a bit darker, it becomes a bit more difficult, right? So I like to do a little bit of a paint over, as with the earlier video, unfortunately, because I left you guys out in the cold. And my goodness, this is wait, is that the right file? Copy image. No, that is fortunately not the actual file. I was working on something else of that size. Okay, so here we go. So with this particular drawing, I think what an issue you might face is you might feel like it might be a saturation issue. So we can kind of try and solve this right away, right? If you kind of take out our hue and saturation control, if you kind of tune down the science, right, it kind of becomes like this. So right away, if you were thinking that the color is a bit of an issue, right? I mean, if you want to keep Sephiroth's blue eyes, you can do that as well. So if you're thinking that the color, the blue and the reds were clashing a bit too much, right? You could simply consider removing the influence of the blue. So this is one way to do it. Or let's say in this case, you might feel like the reds are a bit too strong, so you might want to tune back the reds. Although I must say reds is a little bit more difficult to tune, because generally speaking, right, we include this sort of like when we're drawing like with characters with a slightly lighter skin tone, you see a little more blood vessels under the skin. It's a bit of a strange way to say it, but you see a little bit more red in the skin, right? So as a result, when you're adjusting like red hues, you can't affect these areas as well. However, that is not to say that skin tone should be excluded, because it is still red, right? So in a palette where everything is mostly blue, you kind of want to be a little bit careful how you use red, right? So one way to do it is to simply desaturate the red, but once again, as you can see, this is the kind of effect that you might have. Now you might be wondering, one of the issues that I do see with this drawing, since you asked for my more unfiltered feedback, is that the blue feels a little bit uncontrolled, right? Because as we can see here, your main source of blue light is really from the main light effect, kind of coming in across this way. Sure, I think the glowing petals contribute a little bit of it, but unfortunately, right, if you combine it all together, it gets a tiny bit confusing, because we have a lot of bright highlights across Sephiroth's clothing here. Then it becomes a little bit difficult to identify which actually are the ones that you want to be focusing on. So it could feel as if there's just a mysterious light sort of shining across his body versus all these individual petals kind of giving out light. So if you were to take a more raw approach, I would say to sort of allow his main body to kind of darken a little bit, right? Since he's wearing dark clothes, you can allow for it to just be a little bit darker, right? And then we can kind of contain the effect of the little sparkles of light to very specific areas. So you don't want to let it spread too far, because then you kind of give off the wrong impression, right? Like this is more than just sparkles of light reflecting off his body. It becomes a case of like, oh, is there a really bright blue spotlight shining on him? So this is the kind of stuff that that you might want to consider. So in this case, right, I have really made a little bit of adjustments. So here is where things kind of get a little bit confusing, because as you can see here, right, the skin tone is very prominent. I think it's a good thing because it creates a clear separation between different materials. But issue here is that since most of the area is sort of bathed in this cool bluish light, what happens is that the red here stands out a little bit too much, right? The red on his skin tone here stands out a little bit too much. So what I'm going to do is I am going to take all this area. I'm going to use selective color for this one, and I'm just going to tone it down a little bit. Right, I'm going to tone it down a little bit. Kind of like this, right? So if I tone it down like this, right, you can see the red feels almost removed from his facial area. And then if we were to add a little bit of that bluish influence to his skin tone as well, it's possible to do that. Just blend it in a little bit more, right? If we were to add in that bluish influence to his skin tone just a tiny bit, right, you will kind of get this effect, right? Allow the blue and the reds to play across all materials. Just because it is a skin tone doesn't mean you don't have to be like, okay, I need to maintain this all the way, right? Local color is the base. Usually that's how I think about it. However, as you add in more light sources, they do override it to some extent. So feel free to kind of allow the blue light to kind of play across the body, including the skin tone, including other areas. Right, just allow the blue light to kind of take its course. So now the last issue here is with the red light. So you might notice it's really hard to draw red light because red is kind of almost by definition, by its nature, a pretty dark sort of light, right? Because red, it's not the light that, how do I quite put it? In terms of oh my goodness, I can't believe I forgot the index. Okay, so basically there's a color index, the exact name of which escapes me at the moment, which kind of measures how much color a certain type of light sort of reveals, right? So incandescent bulbs, they kind of tint everything very orange, whereas sort of sunlight has a perfect index of 1. Is it CRI, color reflective index? It's something like that. But either way, the point is that different colors of different types of light kind of reflect off the materials of which they reflect off. Oh my goodness, oh my good. I can't arrange my thoughts today. So basically, let me put it in an example, right? If you shine a red light on something, something's going to appear super, super red and a little bit dark. If you shine a white light on something, unless it's such a strong light until it's almost like a spotlight, right? Everything is going to sort of reveal its natural local color. All right. So once again, if you use a color like a red light, which is something that also exists in real life, everything underneath it is going to appear very red, right? You could have a brown, you can have a brown chocolate bar, you can have a yellow cardboard box, you can have a green plant, you can have yourself standing there, no matter your skin tone or your hair color, right? If you throw all that into a red light, all you're going to see is a whole bunch of red. However, if all these were placed at the sunlight, all their local colors or natural colors will be visible. So going all this way to say that is to say that red light tints things very heavily and it's pretty dark. So when you're using red light, right, notice how red light almost darkens this side of his nose rather than lighten it. So you have to be a little bit careful when using it. It's certainly possible to use red light, right? For example, here you use a bit of a lighter red. So I would say when using red light, you want to reserve it for areas where the lighting is weak, right? In this case, because you have a really strong blue light, right? Blue lights tend to be blue or whitish lights tends to be super strong. So when you have a situation like that, they kind of compete as well, right? So it adds another layer of complexity to it. So if you want two lights to be balanced in strength, right? Or rather you want it to feel a little bit more natural, I suggest allowing the red light to be slightly less red than what you previously used, right? Just allow it to be still red, but not too insanely red, right? Because right now, all the red is doing is it almost feels like it's darkening areas that are already in shadow. So this is something you want to be very careful of, because red light, once again, right, you're just applying red to an area, right? You're just applying red to an area, but unless the area is really dark already, it's difficult to kind of add on the very deep red. So I think I've explained it quite a bit, right? I'm not too great with my words today, so I do apologize. So I hadn't expected to get into a bit more of a technical discussion regarding this, but either way, like red is a difficult light to use, right? That's why normally you see red in like nightclubs, in very dark scenarios, very dark places where the only light source is red. And so you can kind of get away with using it as an illuminating source. But when everything is super bright, you want to be very careful about using dim red light, because usually dim red light just kind of doesn't really show up in a bright environment. So here we can allow the red light to kind of play across the face against the blue. And then we have something like this, right? And if I were to just kind of adjust things a little bit like this, right? So you want to be consistent as well. So if you have a very bright red light, you can allow the edges to, you can allow for the edges to show a little bit of that deeper red, but you want to make sure that the core part, right, as you can see, the core parts here are light, right? It brightens the area rather than darkens it. So if we kind of take a look at the end result of beginning and end, right, this is sort of a tuning I would do. So in a sense, you were right that the saturation feels a little bit off, but I don't think it's that big of an issue. It's more so of a case of red light just being really hard to handle. Now, of course, right, at this point in time, you may want to say, okay, so I prefer your earlier solution where we want the red light to kind of come forth. And that's possible as well, right? So if we kind of do this, and then this is a situation where the red sort of take precedence, right? And then the blue kind of just gets faded out into white. So if you really want the red light or a more reddish appearance, this is what you could try and do. Or you could also darken the scene by a lot. So so the red light kind of comes out, right? If you look at lots of my drawings, there were plenty of those where I used red light, and the scenes are usually pretty dark, right? Usually it's the dark side of the character, which doesn't receive any other competing light source, and then you use the red to kind of silhouette or kind of indicate some of the details in the darkness. So this will be the example that I leave you with, and I'm going to paste it back on the Discord. So thanks again, Julia, for your submission. Once again, I really appreciate it. And yeah, so just a small adjustment regarding red light. Red light is very difficult to handle. And if possible, I'd love for you to check out some references when using red light as well, because I think references really make a big difference on how you start perceiving different lights and different materials. And over time, you get a very good idea of how you can sort of manipulate or control them and know when to use them. So yeah, thanks again for your submission, Julia, and let's move on to the next participant, KOLM. So KOLM doesn't say much. He says recent art feedback would be appreciated. So let's take a look. So this is a very interesting scene here, right? With something that is a little bit more comprehensive as a member of a complete scene. So I'm not sure if this is a OC or it is a fan art, so I'm not going to comment on that aspect of things. But one thing I do like to see, or one thing I do appreciate, is the sort of the lighting here is being shown, right? We have lighting on the wall, we have lighting on the plants. I love this plant brush, by the way. So yeah, I love that the lighting is being kept coherent. So one thing I would love to see a little bit more is a little bit of separation between lights, right? Because of course, I think once again, right, as with the previous video, artistic intention is very important. So I don't want to be someone who comes here and says like, hey, you know, this is wrong, I want to see that. But in this one, I would maybe want to see you darken things a little bit. So I'm just going to bring this in for a quick spin. I want to bring this in for a quick spin. And if we kind of darken it a bit like this, I would actually like to see a scene that kind of revolves something around like this, right? Where, well, or at least me, just me, right? Maybe no one else wants to see it this way, but I would like something like this. And one thing I may want to do is maybe allow more of the details to kind of allow more light through here, right? And kind of showcase, if you have plants in the foreground, why not just add shadows of some plants on the shadows as well, right? You can have the characters, right? You can have something like this. Cut that off. Yeah, you can have plants growing here as well to sort of break up the shadows. You can have lots of different things, right? You can have you can, in this case, right, I would say we can allow the light to play across the character a bit more visibly. I know they are like they're rarely sort of blocking certain things, but we can allow the light to sort of play across it, right? sort of keep the image of the character intact. And for this one, right, once again, you can allow the light to play. You can cheat a little bit and just let the light sort of represent the character a little more comprehensively rather than allowing them to block things out completely, right? You can just allow for this a little bit of cheating, but that's fine. And for this character as well, you can just allow the light to sort of play across it more evenly. And then, of course, right, if we can also use brighter materials, like for example, the white top kind of reflects a little bit more light, something like this. This is how, on a very simple level, I would want to try something like this. But once again, right, this is sort of how, sort of how I would like to maybe see you give it an attempt. I know you didn't request for paint over or very, very detailed feedback, but I just wanted, well, I might as well just include this just for reference, right? Just in case if you wanted to kind of look into this direction a little bit more. So thanks again, KOLM, for you sending in your work. And yeah, so here's my kind of simple feedback, right? Because I love these kind of sort of warm colors, but I think it's that these warm colors don't really shine unless you sort of put it deep in the night. So this is what I was thinking of. So very simple edit. And next, let's move on to Trellia. Trellia says, hi, this is my latest piece in my OC Angela. I won't lie, I'm struggling hard with backgrounds, adding things that make the story. I feel like I either add too much or more often not enough, and things look a little flat. If you have any advice to help with that, I'll take it graciously. Any feedback will only help me. I've also been trying to work more on atmosphere, which you can see in the second piece with another OC, Rebecca. It's a bit older, couple of months, but there's some weird, chaotic story here that I like. Again, any feedback's appreciated. Is it too much? Not enough? I'm a bit of a loss, but I want to really improve. So have at it. Thank you for doing this. Appreciate it very much. Cheers. Well, cheers to you as well. Thank you for submitting your work, and let's take a look. Ooh, I love this one. Very, very exciting. So it's a interior of almost like a space station. We have something like a planter box here with like a holographic light. We have a space station outside. We have like Jupiter. Is that Jupiter? Kind of floating outside. We have a bunch of space debris. And then we have our character. And next we have the one that you mentioned. This one where you try to work a little bit more atmosphere. And well, I really like this one as well. I think it's really wonderful. It's something burning. Might be a windmill. And the character just kind of looking on like this, right? So very wonderful work. I like it so much. It's excellent. So let's kind of take a look at what you were saying, right? You were feeling like the amount of what you added is enough or too much or not enough, and things look flat. So, and you also mentioned that, yeah, for the second one, there isn't too much other than it's focused on atmosphere. So, one thing that I want to kind of hone in on, right? I think it's a pretty common thing, and by no means is this any kind of disparagement because I myself face it as well. So, one of the more common things, one of the more common issues we run into is that as we start to get a little bit more ambitious with what we are doing, the issue starts to become that we start to encounter challenges where we did not expect them, right? Because firstly, you know, we were, how do I quite put it? Right, we were trying to include more things. Rather than the things that we include being necessarily wrong, rather than that, sometimes the issue could just be that we are developing our tastes to a point where we like what we've added, of course, right? Because otherwise we wouldn't be adding them. But we start to notice that whole image doesn't really come together perfectly as much as we would like. So I think that is something that's pretty common. So let's take a look at how we can remedy this, right? So firstly, for this first image, I want to say the issue is that the light source is a little bit confused. The light source feels a tiny little bit confused because we have the space station here, which kind of tells us where the sun is coming from. I'm going to assume the exterior is space, right? And then we can have this foreshortened world over here. So you can kind of see this exterior of space, and the light is coming from there. So firstly, we want to make it very clear where the light is coming from. So I will recommend that we just kind of complete this arc, right? Allow the light to sort of come in from this angle, right? Allow the light to come in from this angle, right? Show a little bit of detail here, and then just cast the shadow straight across. Cast the shadow straight, just like this. So if we have a light that's coming from this angle, what that means is that all this would just be in shadow, right? All this would just be in shadow, so we want to sort of darken things down a bit. We want to almost silhouette the character, right? I know sometimes it feels really counterintuitive to be silhouetting a character, which, you know, a character generally feels pretty important, right? So normally you don't really want to be silhouetting the character, but it depends on how the lighting goes, right? Sometimes it might be good to silhouette a character and allow little bits of light reflecting off things like the space station and allow the background, which is brighter, to kind of hone in on the features of the character that you want to look at, right? So previously, right, this area was really bright, but I feel it doesn't do too much for the composition. And because there's not really anything I really want to be looking at here, and I don't mean that the drawing is uninteresting, but you may not have intended for anything to be interesting here, right? Because it's just a shirt and her arm, right? Shirts and arms, there's no difference whether we put that in a silhouette or if we put that, you know, in bright light, right? It's kind of irrelevant. So so it's not a bad idea to just allow it to sit quietly in shadow like this, right? Just to allow it to sit a little bit more quietly, right? Just allow it to sit a little bit more quietly like this. And then for the outside, right, we can make use of the bright light and the window effect, right? The fact that there's a window to kind of almost add a little bit of a glow to this. All right, I'm just going to use my usual round brush. Nothing too amazing here. And then the internal area, we can kind of just calm it down a little bit as well, right? We can have a warm light coming from below. I think that is a very good idea that you've had. So we want to contain it just a little bit, right? We want it to come down from below. So we kind of sweep up our brush like this, right? And then we can kind of contain it like this, right? I want to allow it to come up from below. Something like this, right? You can allow a bit of warm light in like this. Or you can define it a little bit more, right? In such a situation, right, this might be a good area, let's say, for you to add a little bit of detail here, like what kind of things you want to put here that tells a bit more of a story about the character, right? This is some area you can put it. Or let's say if you want the internal area to be a little bit more quiet, right? Let's say this is not what you want. You can just, let me kind of click that away. You can just calm it down a little bit normally as well, right? Just with this blue tone. And then you can allow the warmth to be kind of included in here. I would like to see this, the Jupiter to feel a little bit more complete, right? Something like this, right? Something like this could be good, I think. Because the main issue is that the lighting feels a little bit too confused in this one. Like, where is the light coming from? Is it coming from this way, right? If it's coming from this way, then why would the space station be highlighted like that? So if we kind of go with your original intent, we will have to illuminate the space station from a different angle, right? Something like this. Something like this, right? It's a little bit difficult to color pick because of the noise, the Gaussian distributed noise they've added. So no blame to you, of course. And then here we can have like Jupiter falling a little bit more into shadow. Right, we can allow that to fall a little bit into shadow because of how the light works. And then we can make sure the shadows cut across like this, right? Because of how the light is coming from the window here. And then you want to transfer that brightness onto the wall behind as well. And then allow the shadows to kind of play across individual pieces, like something like this, right? Maybe something like this is your intent, right? We have a little bit of that warm, a little bit brighter, I think. A little bit of warmth coming in. And also got to be careful about physical because her chest is going to block a little bit of that light as well. So the arm really isn't going to get that much light, right? If you think about it, if you're looking at a character from outside the window, will you see a lot of her upper arm? Not really, I don't think. So you can kind of think of it that way, right? So something like this. And then in the background, you can kind of either calm it down once again with a little bit of blue, And then we might have something like this. Right, can allow the warmth to spread up a bit into these areas. This one can just let it be dark. Right, can very thin sliver of light. And then you can even add like scratches on the window to indicate the presence of a window. Something like this, right? So once again, two options for you. Option one is having a light coming from behind. And then here you can also kind of, if you want to think about it, you can add another window in her spaceship where, you know, we can kind of light shining through like this. This one, it's a bit difficult to manage, so I won't do it right now. But yeah, if the light is coming from behind, right, you can kind of try out this solution. It silhouettes the character a little bit more and keeps things a little bit more quiet, so you can focus a lot of the attention around the character's face, almost as a silhouette. Right, so this is going to be option one. I'm going to paste it here for you. And then we can have option two. So really, a lot of this isn't so much about whether you're adding the right amount of detail, but rather if you're managing the lighting direction a bit more correctly. So once again, it comes back down to hard physics. So it's one of those things that I think happens quite a lot, right? Sometimes you're looking for errors where there may not be any errors, right? I think you're perfectly free to add more detail. You can add like a bookshelf, you can add books across the bed, you can add decals on the windows, you can add like individual portraits here or hanging as decoration. You can add all kinds of doodads everywhere. But as long as in terms of physics it works out, generally speaking, I think it's fine. So for this one, I think you're really onto something very nice here, right? I'll just do a quick paint over as well since you asked for overall feedback. One thing I would love to see is that since you have decided the light kind of comes down this way, it's a little bit of a spotlight, I would just allow you to let the spotlight sort of form like this, right? And for this part, I would love for you to extend it out just a tiny bit. You want to allow the head to cast a shadow, but you want to allow the what am I saying? The grass to be well lit, right? Allow the spotlight to play out naturally. You can extend the shadow across because of how the shadow works, but small things like this, right? I know you're trying to draw a zebra crossing here. As far as I can tell, it's a zebra. Oh, it's a traffic light. It's a traffic light, and it's a burning traffic light at a zebra crossing. Now the issue is that because of this, right, you're breaking up the silhouette a little bit too much. So if you want to draw a spotlight, I'll make this small addition here, right, to kind of complete the lighting effect first, and then kind of allow for the burning effect to kind of take place second. So if you want the burning effect to take place, or well, this once again comes into the portion of artistic intent, so I'm not going to alter it too much, right? I'm assuming we want the whole thing burning. But for now, right, this is sort of my interpretation of what feels like the most immediate correction could be. And so here you can even allow for a little bit of that light bouncing off the grass to go onto her body as well. Kind of this area here, right? This is where the spotlight stops and the sort of reflective light kind of comes in. Similar for this one, you can just let the green kind of take over her body a little bit. Right here, you've already done so. That's a great work. And then, yeah, this is how I would change it. Just a really, really small change. And I'm going to paste it back here as well. So just some really small pieces of feedback, just very small things. Overall, I think you're going in some very nice places. I'd love for you to just keep exploring your ideas, but also pay attention to the physics of how things are coming together, because that's pretty important. And yeah, thanks again, Trellia, for your submission. And let's move on to Ohan. Ohan, who says, scenes of my first OC so far. Oldest one is Pillar Scene, most recent is Window Shot. So they did not ask for feedback, so I won't be dispensing any unwanted advice. Let's just do a bit of appreciation. Love the giving a cat an umbrella type of vibe here. Very lovely, and looks like a very wise cat as well, right? With a little bit of a stash. Very happy and wise cat. Loving the design. And ooh, what is this? Some kind of slanted pillar? well, let's just say the design here is really interesting. Love the themes. I'd love to see you to do more with this in terms of um, completing sort of the world, seeing more of the world. I think that would be pretty cool. And I have one that's a little bit more lighting based, right? This character is a very cool mask. I think that's pretty interesting. And Ohan says here, your username and the street scene outside. Love they're including various elements here, right? That the wooden elements. There's even a cobweb here. There's lightning in the background. There's like joss sticks, incense sticks in the foreground, and there's a snake eating a bird. Wow, this is like beyond my pay grade. Loving the various elements you're putting in here. Definitely have a very strong direction on which you want to go. Love to see you develop this more, and this one as well, right? Yeah, almost like some sort of abandoned place where this character is checking out, reaching out to a small incense burner almost. Very low into a small bird. Very lovely themes. I do apologize if I can't tell quite everything is what everything is going on, but there's a lot of flavor here. Loving it very much, and I guess it's a good example for what an OC should be. A character that's really original and expresses what you want to show. So thanks again for the submission, Ohan. And let's move on to FGW. FGW, who says my favorite original characters. So that's pretty interesting. Let's just kind of take a look. So we have very cool stomach design. The tongue with a lashing out a saliva heart. That's very interesting. We even have like the dripping down from the camera lens. The very lovely design here. Very memorable. Here we have a little bit. Oh, here's the process, like you see. Yeah, we can kind of see her getting closer and closer to the screen. So loving the process. Very energetic sketch, as you can see. So this one will have a little bit more of a design. Very cool design process as well, right? Loving the more plant-based, as you say, more gothic, wilderness. Yeah, definitely a little bit more tattered. And God Wild, plant plus vampire demon. Yeah, definitely a bit more of a combination here. This one has less of plants though. This one's just very planty. And lastly, interesting, interesting characters here. With a severed head with flame taking its place. And this chest design is really interesting as well, right? Oh, so she kind of has like the middle part of her body kind of is like complete as is one with the flame. That is very interesting. Very cool designs here. Oh, Venus Flytrap. I'm assuming this one's the Venus Flytrap character. And the Dullahan. I'm going to guess that is kind of the folktale term for a character who has their own severed head. I'm just gonna get like a wild guess over there. But thanks again for your submission, FGW. And next we have Green Tea, a couple drawing my OCs. I also thought since this is a 4-year anniversary, I'll redraw something for 4 years ago. That's a pretty good idea. My OCR, Luna, the red-haired one, is kind of the hot-headed attack dog, so to say. So the blue-grayish hair one is more of the calm and collected one. Technically, the black-haired girl is one of my very first OCs. I never did much of her. I also included an older version of Luna from last year's special, just to have a bit of comparison. She definitely changed a lot. It's sure been an interesting 4 years with plenty of change, especially when I look at my art style. I think I've been playing too much ZZZ. I've seen fan art of that. I haven't played it myself. I'll be very happy about any feedback you have, thoughts on the character designs, and what I could change or improve. And if you give some advice on how to come up with interesting poses and shots, since I'm way too relying on finding a reference that basically depicts what I already want to draw. Thank you. Okay, so let's kind of take a look. Oh, see, we have a hot-headed character here, and then we have a calm and collected character here. So love the scene. I love the scenery to start off with. It's kind of a car park. We have a car here. They're kind of sitting around. So looks like something I would love to draw as well, right? Very interesting setup here. Overall, the design, love the barbed wire design on her shirt as well. Love to see the barbed wire kind of twist and curl a little bit to make some patterns, right? It's a pretty cool design. Love to see you do a little bit more with it. Potentially going to the front of the jacket as well. That could be pretty cool. Love the sort of lace patterns on the stockings. It's like details like this are pretty important, right? I'm glad that you have your eye on them very early on. has a gun. This one has a sword. Very classic combination. Next, this one is going to be, let's see, which one is it? Oh, I think this is the older version, I think, or is this the older version? I think, I think this might be a newer version as well, because he mentioned he's been playing ZZZ, which I assume is a game with a pretty anime-ish art style. So things have definitely become a bit more anime-ish, which is fine, right? If you enjoy the visuals, just emulate it a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that. Can see some more energetic poses as well. Very lovely use of these half-tone effects in the background. Very cool. Very cool poses as well. Next, we have this your original OC, which I think is pretty interesting as well, right? Love the undercut. Is that how you call it? The reds coming out from underneath, right? A jacket and a spear. Lovely spear design. There's even patterns on the underside, right? So much attention to detail. Lovely OCs you have. Oh, this one might be from a long time ago, right? Before you watched as much anime, maybe? Am I getting it correct? I think that's the case, right? So yeah, these might be from earlier when you watched a little bit less anime or played a little bit less ZZZ. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? Art style changes and evolves over time, right? Initially when I started with, right, it was a pretty innocent characters wearing witch hats and stuff like that. And nowadays we have, the bad guys who are, I suppose, by all measures, not that good of people, I guess. So, people and art styles do change. I think as long as you enjoy it, there's nothing wrong with just being in the moment. So, in terms of any advice I can give on thoughts of character designs, I'll just go through it now. So, as I mentioned earlier on, we'd love to see a little bit more of the barbed wire design kind of being refined a little bit more. You could include it on more of the jacket. Basically, think of if there was such a jacket in real life, right? Once again, references are your friend. How would they design it, right? It's perfectly fine to take reference from that as well. So there's no issue whatsoever. Yeah. And in terms of design, I love the blue-headed girl's design as well. Just feels like her top, the beige top, feels like it maybe contrasts a little bit of the skirt. Maybe the skirt could be black or also white, right? It's one of those things that I'm also not sure. Like, you really need to do a little bit more exploring on the end. Maybe I like to see a black skirt with blue accents. I think that could be cool. So that is kind of my very basic initial thoughts on that as well. But overall, I love the design, the color palette. It looks like something I would love to do as well. So I don't think there's anything for me to say like, hey, this is wrong, I want you to change it. Actually, in this one, the blue skirt looks pretty good. So, forget what I said. It just looks pretty good. I just love you to keep exploring it, right? If you're having fun with it, just keep exploring it. In terms of coming up with interesting poses and shots, of course, right? You can just keep sketching. You can just keep doing what you're already doing, and it's perfectly fine. Because we all look for lots of poses on Pinterest. It's less so much of looking for the exact pose, but looking for a reference that kind of gets close, and then you modify it using your knowledge of anatomy. Or you can also take your own reference photos. You can purchase a posable figurine, or you can use a 3D program. There are some web ones where I think Magic Poser, you can search that up, is the one that I use once in a while for scenes where I really want it to have a very precise pose, and I just can't find any pose for it. But in general, it's not so much that you're not allowed to use reference, but rather you should aim towards extracting information that you need from reference and letting other references or your own knowledge fill in the gaps where you want something to be different. So I feel like that is a good way to think about it, rather than trying to divorce yourself completely from references. Yeah. And at the same time, right, references doesn't just mean copying bit by pixel. It's very important to really understand what's being shown. And there's a lot of depth that goes into slowly studying references over time, right? There's so much to study there, so don't worry about relying on too much. If anything, I'd love for you to rely on it more, but in a very meaningful and very initiative-based manner, where you're the one extracting what you want from each piece of reference. So once again, thanks Green Tea for your submissions, and let's move on to the next participant. And next we have Anam, hopefully I'm getting that right, who says, I've been painting for 3-ish years now. I started digital and stuck with it so I didn't have to deal with buying physical supplies. Lol, I'll show you some progress. First image is something I made before I took your illustration class on Colossal. Second image is the next illustration I made during your Colossal class. Thank you for that. Third and fourth are two of my favorite things I made this year so far. Feedback is always appreciated if you have any as well for the two recent most pieces. So let's take a look. So the very first one from before he took the course. Second one is from after. I can see that you've definitely taken what I've said in mind regarding the lighting, kind of making sure the lighting is set up right, and I think you've done a good job on that, right? Everything looks very directional. And let's take a look at the two recent ones, which you say are one of your favorites. And they are very excellent, I must say. Yeah, so I definitely see what you want, the kind of things that you do want to draw, right? This mermaid character, we have like the mountains by the sea, very, very lovely. I love this overall design so much. I love the colors as well, right? This minty green is such a rare color to see. And there's a raft here. I think that's pretty exciting. The mermaids kind of staring down the raft, I'm guessing, since her gaze is looking this way. And the last one is more recent. Definitely can see the rigor that you have put into drawing the portrait. Right, I think it's pretty good. It's a really good amount. It's a really good kind of practice to really kind of hone in on details. Try to learn from references as much as you can. So for this, in terms of feedback, I would say you're really doing a good job, right? Love how the green, love how the shadows are being filled in by these green lights, right? They're accounted for. They're kind of directional. So yeah, maybe one thing I would want to add is if you want to kind of extend that treatment to this area here as well, right? For example, allow the greens to fill in the shadows a little bit more here in this area, right, where the light kind of strikes across. So it feels like this area is colored a little bit less than the top. But otherwise, I think it's a pretty good portrait. Yeah, just keep at it. They're doing pretty good. For the mermaid one, I think my feedback is, once again, it's a little bit difficult to give because I can tell that you are being very intentional with some of the choices here, right? For example, the red and a combination of the yellow. These are some very, I'll say these are more abstract colors, and in combination with the minty green hair, and sort of these green and purple combinations for the dragons and mermaids and this lost adventurer here. One thing I might want to, I guess, give feedback on is I would like you to maybe consider sort of the position of this raft here, because right now it feels a little bit too subsumed into this overarching structure, and it feels like her gaze is kind of extending this way, right? But I feel like she might want to either have her eyes look down a bit more, right, of her, or have her head kind of bend down a little bit more to look at the person on the raft. But otherwise, I love the concept here very much, right? And the dragons. It's a very cool, very mythological based piece. So overall, I just love to see you continue working on this kind of stuff, right? I can tell that it's something that you definitely really like. We really enjoy drawing, and yeah, I think everyone has a lot to give because they are each unique in what they find interesting, and I think you're onto something here. So love to see you keep exploring this. Just in terms of composition, I want you to consider things a little bit more carefully as to where you put things, right? Just, I will say, to reduce your apprehension when it comes to playing with positioning various elements in your drawing, right? I think it's never too late to start adjusting them. So yeah, sometimes it's good to sort of evaluate some of your choices just to move things around to see how they change. Also, maybe if these mermaids will also look down at the person on the raft, it could create a bit more of a stronger directional impact towards this opposing character here, right in the corner. So once again, thanks a lot, Anam, for your submission. Really appreciate it. And let's move on to our next one by RobyLou. RobyLou says, "Hi, I have a few pieces here of my OC that I love any feedback on. The black hair one is Ziyun, and the white and black hair one is Nora. Thank you." So this is Ziyun. Once again, right, as someone who is, let's just say, not proficient at drawing male characters and very inexperienced, Just say love your depiction, love the pose, um, love the kind of situation we have here, right? We have all kinds of shadow monsters. We have like rocks sort of floating. He's manipulating the rocks, and he's casting magic on them. I can see from the blue lines. So I guess in terms of the character design, very lovely character design. Is this a male character? They do seem to have a bit of a larger chest, right? Is it a female character? I'm going to get in trouble. So I can't quite tell, right? It could be a very muscular female character. I think it might be, right, given the shape of the chest here. So if there is there additional images? This one's a different character, right? This one's the next one. Yeah, there were three characters of there are three of Nora and one of Ziyun. So for this one, I'd love to see you try out because okay, so the thing about this one is the first thing that kind of struck me is how the red and the greens make a really good combination. So the reds of the scene, the reds of the tassels, and the greens of the clothes, I think they make a really good combination. But it kind of feels a little bit like the purple and the blue sort of drag it breaks up the color palette a little bit too much. So this is something that I'm slightly concerned about. I would like to see if you want to try to kind of use perhaps green for this, or even yellow, something that fits in a little bit better with red and green, right? Maybe a yellowish, a kind of greenish yellowish tint to this one might be good. And the next one is I think the pose is how do I quite put it? I think the pose could be refined a little bit because right now it seems as if the character is doing more of a split. Is doing a little bit more of a split than it looks a little bit awkward, right? I would love to see it be a little bit more directional. For example, if you want to have one leg behind and one leg in front, you might want to adjust that a little bit because as we can see, the character has swung their spear around, right? So I imagine that this leg will be a little bit less tilted at this angle and a little bit more forward, right? With this leg, I think it's fine. So you kind of just want to have this the character's left leg be a little bit more stable, I think. I think might be a good way to sort of put this. And I also would like to see maybe it might be a good idea to allow the tip or the ball of the foot to press down fully on the dirt, right? Because it's kind of arresting the kind of movement this way. So it might be something to adjust. And in terms of the rocks, I find that in terms of rocks, simpler sometimes is better. And rocks, in terms of that, I would like to see a little bit more straight lines, right? Because we have a bunch of curves in the rocks here, which is possible, I guess. But a lot of times when rocks sort of shatter, they shatter in a pretty squarish fashion. Right, so for example, something like this is very square. Well, this I feel like there's a little bit too many curves and a little bit too curvy of a silhouette. So just some really small feedback, like this rock feels a little bit too round. I was starting to think it might be something else. But otherwise, I love the character design very much. Love how everything is going. Love the musculature being shown here as well, right? So overall, excellent work. Very wonderful. And let's take a look at Nora, which I guess you could say is how do I quite put it? It's the kind of character that I might draw once in a while too, right? Love the giant glowing earring here. Loving that. That is very, very cool. And this one, I love the red and the green combination once again. Right, in this case, it's used more of a neon sense. So one thing I think is really lovely is how in the mirror, right, things are just green, whereas in the real world, she's kind of red. So I think that is super cool. That I think is really cool, right? And how her arm is just skeletal, right? She has this prosthetic in the real world, but in I guess it's kind of spirit world, right? Her arm is kind of like missing, almost like a phantom arm. Love that you drew both bones for the forearm too, right? That's a lot of attention to detail. Wow, I'm just loving this. This is really, really good. Yeah, I love how the world kind of shifts lighting across the mirror. Wow, I have to learn from this. I definitely have a lot to learn from this too. Excellent concept here. Very lovely. I have nothing to add. I have nothing to add. You're just doing a wonderful job. And this one I think is more of a direct concept portrait. I think that this is perfectly fine as well, right? You're showcasing her hairstyle. I'd love to be able to explore hairstyles a bit more myself too. I just kind of always default back to the same one. So once again, very inspiring. Love to see the design kind of being shown here, right? The kind of black hair combined with that yellow earring makes for a very nice combination. A little bit more rough in terms of the sketchy paint strokes, but clearly, right, you're capable, very, very capable of finishing the illustration. So I won't comment too much on that. And this one is another one on Nora. Once again, very, very lovely character. Love the dragon here as well, right? I really need to kind of like really need to kind of design some good patterns as well. So yeah, overall, very, very lovely design. Love the prosthetic on the character. Yeah, overall, I think just great work, Robbie. Thanks for your submission, and barely have any feedback for you other than just some very, very minor things that I noticed. So once again, great job. And let's move on to Galaun. Hopefully that is a correct pronunciation. Who says, "Hi, I'm happy to share my work with you and your community. I started drawing casually for 4 to 5 years now and started with manga-like drawing, and I recently wanted to begin some of my OCs in a cyberpunk-like world. Here are 3 main protagonists from this world. Hope you enjoy it. It would be great to have some feedbacks or advices overall, especially for the composition. Love your work and the inspiration you gave to us. Thank you." And thank you, Galaun, for sharing your work. So, yeah, OCs in the cyberpunk world, and in terms of compositional feedback. So let's take a look. So the first one, we have a character, very cyberpunky. Love these kind of body tight suit combined with a sword and this kind of jacket, very tech wear like. The background is a little bit difficult to tell what's going on, so this might be the first area of feedback. Some parts feels like you might be using just a tiny bit too much of an airbrush, right? For example, in these areas here, it just feels like it's a tiny bit too much airbrush. But if we were to talk about composition, I'd love to see you add in a little bit more indicative details for the background, right? Because sometimes it feels like some of these details are more just there for the sake of filling in space. Not to sound too harsh, but in terms of composition, I think it's important, even if you have a bit of a blurred background, to indicate sort of the basic function of what's going on. So I'd love to see a little bit more of that, for example, from this. But I do enjoy it, right? I do enjoy the red accents in this very otherwise grayish piece. Love the design as well. For this one, we have a character sitting on the stairs, right? This is what I kind of mean, right? You have a background where you showcase a more complex scene, you might want to show what's actually going on. So in this case, it's pretty cool. We have a metallic prosthetic arm, we have a hoodie, and we have the character sitting on the set of stairs. So in terms of composition, I would say this is perfectly fine. And in terms of, let's say, if you want to improve on this, I would love to request that you can start looking for some references. I think references in this situation can be very helpful. And I don't just mean, okay, look for one reference and then copy it. I mean, look for references of people sitting on stairs, right? Which one do you like? Why? And then from there on, you can say, okay, I love this pose, I love this angle, let me try and replicate it. I think you have some really great ideas. The effort that goes into the design, they're drawing all these buildings and setting up the scene shows that you really have something you want to show. But I would love for you to be able to also use references to sort of help yourself kind of solidify your vision a bit more and kind of be able to express elements more clearly, understand them more clearly a bit at a time. So I think that's what I would say. And lastly, loving this one, we have a character in the rain holding a sword. Very cool pose. In terms of composition, this one is definitely I feel like the background is a little bit unclear. For example, we have some cracked ground over here, and then we have like shapes in the background, which once again are a little bit difficult to tell outright. But of course, the foreground is fine. I think having the character front and center does have a good, strong effect. In terms of composition, I don't think there is anything really too much to change. But I would once again like to see you put more thought into the background in terms of making things more visibly clear. Other than that, once again, right, it's not a case of just do this, but I would like to direct you once again to, let's say, look for references, look for scenes in movies that you really like, for example, that have this kind of close-up pose, what kind of things that kind of go into the background, how the character is lit. I feel like references can really help you a lot because I think you have some very cool ideas. Love to see where you're able to take them. especially when you can start learning from references. So once again, thanks again, Galaun, for your submission. And next, a submission from an artist who never draw. Wow, that's a lie. So they say, hello, Guays and everyone. That's crazy that my drawings will now be on video and I will be able to get feedback from you on them. Like, man, that's a Guays himself. Wow. So to piece with this bright red bright letters, I already want to ask about the main character's placement in the scene. Is she too small? Because you can barely see her face without zooming in, but if I make her bigger, the scene will lose its sense of size, I'd say. So maybe there's a better place for her in the scene. I hope you understand my dumb question. No, it's not a dumb question. And my last piece with this katana was just a sketch of a fallen angel painting at first, but then it became an OC and a katana and the wall flags, and that was also fun to try to give to some story to the piece. Thanks to your tutorials also, it helps a lot. I really like to hear a feedback on values in this piece because I was trying to make a contrast between her and the background so they don't blend and you can see the silhouette of how it is. So maybe her face look weird. Thank you so much. Looking forward to all your arts and your videos. So sorry for writing the whole essay. Don't say sorry at all. I love to read more as to what you think, so I can give better, closer feedback. So the first question is, let's take a look first, right? So we can have this sort of battle scene, very, very cool. And then the second one, we have the character standing here. So yeah, so what kind of feedback do I have for the first one in terms of placing the main character? Well, this one is something that I can kind of explain pretty directly, so I'll kind of go for it. Okay, so for this one, right, you kind of want to go back to the basics of placing your eye level where you want things to be, because I think you're setting your eye level somewhere around here, right, based on how these floor lines kind of intersect. Yeah, based on the perspective on this floor line, it feels like your POV is almost here. So that is one of the things that I kind of find a little bit strange to start off with. So there's two options that you can go from here. One is that you might want to sort of lower or adjust the floor, how the floor looks, right? You might want to press it down a bit so that your eye level line is sort of here in line with the character, which seems to be the case, right? Based on the rest of the scene. So firstly, I think you might want to adjust the floor lines a little bit lower like this to kind of coincide with this, right? Secondly, if you're putting your eye level at the character's face, then it kind of makes sense that people who are looking at her will also be at eye level, right? So if we kind of, right, this will also be this person's eye level. So rather than that, you'll get the shoulder here. Rather than the hand, you'll get the shoulder here, right? So something like this, right? Once again, a very rough edit from me. So, of course, right, in this case, you might want to allow them to raise the gun up like this. You want to raise the gun up like this, so to kind of change the pose a bit. Or let's say if you really want them to stand like here, like this, it's fine as well, right? Because they could be on a set of stairs. It could be a different position. So yeah, main thing is really just to change the floor. And you asked about whether the character's face is too small. I think it's perfectly fine. I don't think there's anything that you really need to change about it. If anything, I might want you to even silhouette the character a little bit more, right? I want you to silhouette the character a little bit more. See, the reason is that because of this composition, the purpose isn't really to look at a character's face, right? It's to kind of look at the character's pose. And because it's to look at the character's pose, right? You really don't really need the focus of the scene. You can add in the light of the cigarette back in, right? The pose is the key here, right? The cigarette and the little cigarette flame is more than enough to kind of showcase what's going on. So you don't really need to showcase her face in detail, right? There could be a different composition that does it much better. But in this case, I think the silhouette really kind of helps to emphasize not only the pose, right? Emphasizes the pose and the wind, and it adds a sense of mystery and danger to the sense of the character. So I think it's perfectly fine as is. If anything, I would like to darken the face a bit more. So for this next one, where they talk about they want to blend the values a bit, let's also take a look at that, right? They say they want to separate things out a little bit. Let me just read it again, right, just to be sure. Let's see. Values in this piece between the contrast and the background. So in terms of values here, I would almost say that the lighting direction is a little tiny bit off. Is it a little bit off? Let me think about it. Mm, well, to be honest, I would say that the lighting itself is mostly fine, right? You have a lighting coming in from the left side. But one thing, I guess, one issue would be that I would like to see the pink sort of be a little bit more influenced by the surroundings, because in terms of the colors being used in the surroundings, you have a very subdued kind of hue, but with the pink, it feels a little bit too neon, right? So if you really want the pink hair to continue, I recommend just kind of tuning it down a little bit more, right? Similar to this area here, you might want to allow the blue light to kind of take up a little bit more influence, right? You may want the blue light to be a little bit more influential, right? Something like this. I know it's tempting to use red a lot more because red is kind of a color that feels very strong and very striking, but sometimes allowing it to kind of silhouette a bit more naturally into the background could be good as well. Now, if you want to contrast it more, right, then the answer is pretty simple. You can either silhouette the character more and bring out the background a little bit more, or you can allow the character to remain just as bright, and then you can darken the surrounding sky a little bit more, right? I think either way works. But once again, right, I don't think the end goal should always be just to create contrast. I think the end goal could simply be to illustrate a character in a way that makes sense in terms of lighting and physics, and then that just could be enough. So overall, I wouldn't say to worry too much about it. I would say maybe adjust the colors a little bit to allow the blue skylight to, if anything, influence the character just a little bit more, right? And then yeah, I think that's about it. So once again, right, as you can see, definitely you put quite a bit of effort into this. So yeah, keep up the good work. Just some very small areas that I think you might want to just kind of take a look at and think about a bit more. So once again, thank you for your submission, and let's move on to Suzaku. Suzaku, who says, congrats on your 4th year. Thank you very much. As an artist, I find your resilience and journey inspirational, not to mention the amount of resources provided to Patreon members. I want to thank you, Guiz, for being an excellent role model and instructor, and I look forward to your future works. So very kind words. Really appreciate it. In my submission to personal OC, I'm developing for a story. I would love to hear feedback on the work. So let's take a look. Firstly, her abs are really strong, right? This is really strong. So immediately, this is striking. That's great. Love to see that. She's holding a sword, and she has red hair and a green earring. So a good color combination. Actually, I really like this design. Love this kind of half jacket, this high crop jacket, with this almost muscle suit, right? Gives it a very gives it a semi cyberpunk feel, but it feels grounded because of the almost like a Mandarin collar. I love the half gloves as well and the sword. So in terms of design, I would say that you're pretty much there. I'd love to see you develop this color scheme a little bit more. And I'd love to see a little bit more what's going on in the background. So once again, it feels like it's one of those situations where you have a really, really nice design, but I love to see you add a little bit more rigor into how you place, for example, the character into the scene, right? Where the light is coming from, and why is the scene as such. So I really want to be able to tell what's going on in the background, because right now it just seems a little bit too ambiguous. I'm getting the feel like it's kind of like almost like a sewage pipe area where there's debris floating around. There are pieces of red, could be cloth. So I'm a little bit unsure of that. I'd love to see you work on that a little bit more. But otherwise, in terms of if you're talking about the design, I think it's absolutely wonderful. I really want to see more of this. I love the haircut as well. It's very cute. Love the red in the hair, and yeah. So I guess if I had to give you an assignment, I would say I'd love for you to look up more references. Again, my advice is always references, right? Love to see you grab some more references that you like and try to draw a character in one of those poses. I think that's a really good exercise for you to not only continuing to develop and get a feel for your character, like drawing how, for example, would this costume look from a different angle, right? All these different things, but also at the same time kind of get a good idea of what kind of scene you would like to draw more of, and also kind of hone in a little bit more on the physical presence of various elements. And now I'm not saying this to put you down or anything, because it is difficult to draw backgrounds, right? It's overwhelming. I've had a lot of practice for a long time, but even now I'm still not like perfect at it. I'm far from it, to be honest. So yeah, just some really small things, but I love the overall design. For example, the latex gloves, let's say if you want to pay more attention to how to pose a hand, for example, I think would do a lot of good work for excuse me, for this portion here. I love to see more designs on the gloves, for example, if you feel like this is something you want to go in the direction of. But otherwise, I love the design very much, and thanks once again. I really appreciate your kind words, and I'll keep doing my best to bring you guys better and better stuff. So yeah, let's move on to, I think there are two more here. It got a little bit jumbled up because I think they resubmitted it just a little bit, right? So you can see some of these are from 2023, so, and 2024, so it's a little tiny bit jumbled up. And let's kind of see some from 2024. These I've already reviewed. And yes, we have Capitão, who says, I didn't have a lot of time to draw, but I painted this OC of mine with acrylics. This picture has some AI poison noise layer for protection. Sorry about that. No worries at all. And let's take a look. So, very, very acrylic, you say? Acrylic, my goodness. Like, okay, let me be clear. I am someone who has almost never dabbled in like physical medium outside of art classes in school back then. Back when I had no interest in drawing. So if anyone shows me anything with like, hey, you know, I painted this in acrylics, I'm like, or any physical media for that matter, I'm very impressed. So firstly, great job. It's not easy to manage all these colors with physical medium. I can only imagine. So yeah, firstly, congratulations on finishing this piece. I'm very impressed. And secondly, I love the kind of texture that has kind of come about from this, right? From the character's face. Love the kind of little brownish warm color. Is this the AI noise protection? Sorry, I can't tell. But I'm going to assume this is that AI noise protection thing, right? But otherwise, I kind of love the how the pose is drawn, like from the back, right? I think suits look pretty good from this angle. I think you've captured it perfectly. There's wind. There's the magic cards flying around. I think you've captured the image of your magician OC very perfectly, and in acrylics too. So yeah, definitely a very good job. Unfortunately, I really can't comment too much on the technique because I have no idea what kind of difficulties acrylic kind of poses. So I don't want to run off my mouth here and say something that I have no idea. That I have no idea what is about. So just want to say, I think you did a really good job. Yeah, wonderful use of color and wonderful pose. I think that is the thing that kind of stuck out to me the most, right? This got a very cool pose, kind of that look of melancholy. Very lovely. Thanks again for your submission, Capitão. And last we have Mimux. So Mimux here says, I think this is the last one, right? I think I've reviewed everyone else. Yeah, I think so. So Mimux says, would appreciate some tips on how I can get the spoons to look right. Maybe on how the pose would be more clear and readable. Thank you very much for your work. Learning a lot from this Patreon, and thank you for reviewing Lost submission. No. This is not at all. I should be doing this. I'm the one who lost all of it, so here I am reviewing it. And what a coincidence! Mimux, you're the last person of the lost submissions. So let's kind of take a look. So I'm going to assume this is a character because how can get the spoons to look right and a pose to be more clear? Okay, let's see what I can do. So how the spoons can look more clear? I think with spoons and reflective materials, what you really want to do is kind of allow a band of shadows, right? You want a kind of a band of shadows. Actually, would that be it? So a spoon is kind of round, right? So maybe you want the shadows to be a bit round as well. So I don't have a spoon with me right now, but my advice is, let's say if my sort of explanation here is still a little bit unsatisfactory, why not just look at a spoon? Oh, I'm so sorry. I think that kind of sounded a little bit too dismissive, but I think if I had a spoon right now, I would definitely look at it and kind of figure out, from there what I would do. So I'm not really doing a good job here of illustrating your spoon here. So my apologies. How would the lights reflect? So see, this is one of those things where this is the kind of moment where you want to pick out references. and really look at them, right? So I think this is maybe how I would do it. Right, kind of allow for the spoon here. And then I will say we want to allow the foreshortening to take up a bigger amount of space. Something like this, right? Am I really doing a good job? So this is the kind of times where I am doubting myself. Like, spoons are not easy to draw. So congratulations, you've stumped me. I would love to go look for some I'd love to go look for some look for a spoon right now, but I think someone else is using the kitchen, so unfortunately. So in terms of the pose, right, let's move on to the next question of the pose. I think these spoons are perfectly fine. So what if we just kind of go with that, right? If the light kind of comes in from the left like this. If the light kind of comes in from the left like this, would this work? Yeah, I think this one is okay. Like, maybe you might want to consider this kind of setup of the spoon. Like, just very bright light on one side. Once again, it's a little bit tough for me as well. So, well, I'm just going to be honest. In this situation, I will go look for a reference. I will take a photo of a spoon, and then I will try my best to copy it as closely as I can first, and then figure out the details later, because this is tough. Let's just kind of start with where you started off, right? Yeah, I think it's a very slight improvement because, as you can see before, right, the shadows do follow the contour of the spoon. So I think just by doing that, it helps a lot with how the overall spoon is perceived. So something like this. The red is a little bit difficult, so I kind of know why you left the pose under the red for, but I'm just going to kind of draw over it. Do we want to finish the red? Maybe you can do it kind of like this, sort of staggered pattern out this way. Yeah, and in terms of the pose, I think it's fine. Like, maybe you want to raise this arm up a little more, I think. Right, you want to raise this arm up. You want to foreshorten this arm just a little more. Right, we can raise the sort of sleeve position up a little bit like this. Right, so, and then we can add in a bit of light on the left side to make sure that the lighting stays coherent, right, down this arm. And something like this. I think the shadows here once again, right? So yeah, I think this is how I will sort of change it. This is the original and this is the current one. I know I still haven't done a good job on a spoon, so don't hold it against me. But let me just give you some homework. I would recommend that you look up or take a photo of a spoon that you have, and then kind of just go with that, right? Or maybe a little bit of a bend, a little bit of a contour in a spoon, a little bit of a design in a spoon may make it more interesting, maybe. Yeah, maybe I'll just leave it to you as homework to figure out how best to illustrate this spoon. But I think I've tried my best here, and I think this time my best really isn't good enough. This is one of those things where I would definitely like to look at reference a lot more, right? For example, what's the actual contour of a spoon, right? What kind of identifying features? And yeah, thanks for giving me a good lesson today. I really appreciate it. So unfortunately, I couldn't help as much as I wanted to because I myself has been stumped. But once again, I really do appreciate you sending in the submission mimux. And I have been bamboozled. So yeah, hopefully whatever I said is at least a minimally somewhat tiny, at least a tiny little bit helpful. I know unfortunately I couldn't be as helpful as I wanted to, but let me see if this a bit darker like this maybe. It's tough. It's tough. It's not easy to draw a spoon because it's just so reflective. And yeah, it's not easy. So I really appreciate you attempting such a difficult drawing. Overall, I think I've done a pretty good job. In terms of the posing, I would just like to maybe for you to think about raising the arm, this hand and arm a little bit upwards, so it looks like a bit of a stronger pose, right? Rather than lowering and coming up again. Just kind of make it more direct, and of course add the lighting in on the side, so you get this sort of direct sort of shot right at you. So yeah, just kind of align the lighting a teeny tiny little bit, and allow the pose that you designed to sort of shine. So once again, thank you, Mimux, for stumping me today. Very good ending to this overall event, right? To publicly demonstrate that I definitely have a lot more to learn. So even though this is a bit of a poor attempt, love to sort of paste it here for you. And yeah, once again, thank you for your submission. I think this has been not only a great opportunity for me to really look at all of you guys' wonderful work, but also for me to learn a lot as well, right? Because some of you have some really, really cool ideas and cool designs. So yeah, thank you so much for all your submissions. I really appreciate it. I think this should finally be all. And yeah, once again, I apologize for the delay on this one, even though you guys were the first to submit. So yeah, once again, I hope to see you very soon. Some cool works are coming out very soon, so please do look forward to them. And yeah, thank you, and bye bye.